Chao is a really controversial character in Genshin Impact right now. Some people think that he sucks, some people think that he's really hard to play, some people think that he do no damage, some people think that he have a really long cooldown issues, and I realize those are common misconceptions. And so while everybody like to discuss if Chao is actually good or if Chao is actually just bad, I realize that nobody actually properly address how to properly play Chao rotation, which is what fundamentally eliminate him away from those issues. Is having a properly well executed rotation is the most important part when it comes to playing Chao. So today I figured that I'm gonna go over the 3 basic rotation that you absolutely need to know in order to properly play Chao. And of course, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get started. Now, the 3 main team I'm going to be covering today is going to be the standard national team, the international team, and the firework Chao team, which are the more popular team of Chao. Here is the basic version of the rotation for the standard national team. For the national team, you want to start with a Bennett Elemental Burst, followed by a Sucrose Elemental Skill. This will let you swirl Pyro and decrease the power resistance, as well as transfer Elemental Mastery to any Pyro character, which is of course Xiangling. You want to immediately switch to Xiangling after that to snapshot the TTDS buff from Sucrose onto Xiangling, as well as the Elemental Mastery transfer over from Sucrose. And then you're going to start by casting a Xiangling Elemental Burst first, followed by her Elemental Skills. And after that, you're going to switch to Chao and cast a ranged version of the Elemental Burst, doing a huge AoE vaporize damage. Because you are still standing on Bennett Elemental Burst and you're doing a vaporize, you're going to be doing a tons of burst damage here. After that, you want to enter Chao Elemental Skill form, and then you're going to do about 9 to 10 second worth of N3C, which means 3 normal attack followed by 1 charge attack. A easy way to tell if 9 seconds has passed is simply to look at the Elemental Burst cooldown timer. Because your Elemental Burst down the countdown at like 15 seconds, you want to exit your Elemental Skill at about 3 to 4 seconds left on your Elemental Burst. And then you can simply repeat by going back into the Bennett Elemental Burst right here, into Sucrose, once again into the Xiangling, and finally into once again the Chao Elemental Burst, and then going in again. And this complete one entire cycle of rotation. For the international rotation, you're gonna start by doing a Chao Elemental Skill first, which will apply Hydro to your enemy, and then immediately cast a Bennett Elemental Burst on top of that. This will vaporize the Hydro on the enemy, however, it will not completely remove the Hydro element away from your enemy. And then you're gonna do a Kazu Elemental Burst. This will swirl the remaining Hydro onto the enemy and will increase the Hydro damage of your party as well as decrease the Hydro resistance of the enemy, which in this case is meant to increase your Chao damage by a significant amount. Now note that the Chao Elemental Burst will actually go Pyro here. In a previous video I said that this will go Hydro, but that was actually a mistake. It actually is gonna go Pyro, but that's actually okay because Chao apply Hydro so much that he's actually capable of overtaking the Hydro on the field right now. Anyway, you're gonna follow that with a Kazu Elemental Skill on top of your Bennett Elemental Burst. You'll notice that when he comes down, it will be a Pyro infused Elemental Skill, and this will allow you to swirl Pyro. And so this will give your Pyro party member, which is Xiangling, a huge amount of damage bonus buff, as well as decreasing the enemy Pyro damage resistance. And then of course, we're gonna do the same thing as before. We're gonna switch to Xiangling and then cast her Elemental Burst to snapshot the Bennett buff and snapshot the Kazu buff. So we're gonna cast a Xiangling Q into her Elemental Skills. And finally, once again, into the Chao Elemental Burst for big AoE vaporize damage. And then once again, 9 to 10 seconds worth of N3C or free attack followed by a charge attack. Once again, you can tell the 9 to 10 seconds simply by looking at your cooldown timer, or it's basically whenever your Xiangling Elemental Burst run out. And then you're gonna go back to battering your Xiangling for a little bit and then finally repeat. For the firework Chao, what you want to do is start with a Bennett Elemental Burst, applying Pyro onto your enemy, and then follow up by a ranged elemental burst of Childe. This will let you do a tons of vaporize damage on the Childe elemental burst because you're currently standing on the Bennett elemental burst right now, which gives you tons of attack. Then you want to follow up with Visual Elemental Burst, which summon the Oz, and then immediately follow into a Beidou Elemental skill and an Elemental Burst. Make sure that you cast Beidou Elemental skill immediately before the Elemental Burst so that you can funnel energy into your Beidou for your next rotation. After that, simply switch to Childe, turn on his Elemental skill and enter his melee form, and do about 9 to 10 second worth of N3C, which is free normal attack followed by a charge attack for about 9 to 10 seconds. And then you're gonna follow that up with a Bennett elemental skill once you exit, and then switch to your official for her elemental skill as well, switch to Beidou for her elemental skill to make sure that you are properly generating those pyro and electro energy for your next rotation. After the Beidou elemental skill, you're actually going to go back to Bennett and cast another elemental skill for the final remaining pyro energy. If you're properly playing this team and your team have properly built with energy recharge, you should be getting your Bennett elemental burst back up, and then you're going to repeat the cycle. So you're going to cast another Bennett elemental burst, Childe elemental burst, followed by a Visual elemental burst, and Beidou elemental skill and burst, and then once again into the Childe melee form, and then do 9 to 10 second worth of N1 or N3C, which is free normal attack, and followed by a charge attack for 9 to 10 seconds. And you can see that you can just basically repeat this over and over. If you carefully observe, you'll notice that when you are properly rotating throughout your entire team, your Childe will actually not have any cooldown issues, or he will have very minimum cooldown issues. In most cases, you can see that my Childe elemental skill come back up exactly in time when I go back to Childe and when I need to cast that elemental skill to enter his melee form again. As long as you're pressing the right button in the right order and you're aware of what you are doing, you can have a very successful time of Childe. Now, of course, there are still some advanced technique, and that's what we're going to go over right now. The first advanced technique we're going to talk about is energy funneling. After you tap your skill on Bennett, switch to Xiangling immediately before you catch the pyro energy. This will allow Xiangling to get a little bit more pyro energy out of these pyro particle because the character that is on field will get more value out of it. And so this is very important to make sure that you quickly generate Xiangling elemental burst back up. There's actually a more advanced version known as the Childe Charge Shot Goba funneling or some shit like that. You're gonna start with a Bennett Yi into a Xiangling so you can catch the pyro energy on your Xiangling. And then you're gonna switch to your Childe and do a charge attack on your Childe, which will do a tons of vaporize damage because the enemy is currently infused with pyro. You're gonna then switch back to Bennett, and you'll notice that his elemental skill cooldown is off because we spent about a second to 2 to do the charge attack on Childe. So you're gonna do a elemental skill on your Bennett again, and then switch to your Xiangling to catch the energy once again, and finally switch to your Childe to do an auto charge attack. This will give you a tons of energy on your Xiangling, but also lets you do a lot of good damage on your Childe charge attack because you are doing a vaporized charge attack. What's happening here is that you're gonna start with a Childe elemental skill, followed by a Bennett elemental burst. And instead of switching to sucrose now, you're actually gonna switch to Xiangling and drop the Goba. And just before Goba starts splitting the fire, you're gonna cast sucrose normal attack, which will swirl the hydro on the enemy and decrease the hydro resistance of the enemy. And then once Goba has split the fire, you're gonna cast the sucrose elemental skills, and then this will swirl the pyro and transfer the elemental mastery over to the pyro character, which is Xiangling. Then finally, you're gonna switch to Xiangling again to snapshot the buff from sucrose from the TTDS book, and you continue onto your normal rotation similar to the original national team. Now, if you're a owner of Childe's new signature bow, the Polar Star, you will actually want to start your rotation a little bit differently on Childe. You actually want to do a charge attack followed by a Yi and a normal attack, or start it with a Yi and then a normal attack and then a charge attack to ensure that you proc all of the Polar Star effect. So this is what it will look like instead. Overall, Childe is definitely not a very straightforward character. He definitely requires some learning curve. especially around how to properly do his rotation, which in my opinion is not too difficult to do because it's just about pressing the right button in the right sequence, in the right order, and in the right time, which you can just remember. And once you do it like once or 2 times, it will feel very fluid, and almost anyone can do it. Hopefully this clears some of the confusion up, and I know there's some other misconception like Childe doesn't do any damage at all, when in fact Childe do one of the highest damage in the game, especially with how his riptide work around his quadratic scaling. His quadratic scaling is not a scope of this video, so I'll probably make a separate post covering it, but it's just a basic mathematical concept around how Childe can do tons of AoE damage, way more than anyone else. With that being said, I hope you learned a thing or two from this video about how to properly play Childe, and how Childe is actually a really good character, and he's just a little bit hard to learn, but once you pick him up, he will feel very fluid. And as always, I hope to see you guys next time as well, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.